Hello, minions! At the time I'm recording this, Reddit is going through a subreddit blackout because the CEO decided, hey, I'm going to charge people a lot of money to access our API, when in fact the third parties that are accessing the API are really necessary to help moderate the cesspool that is the Reddit comment section. This is not a dig on Reddit personally, every comment section is a cesspool. Moderators have a very hard job, and yes, it's fun to meme on them, but if they're actually doing their job, it is an underappreciated art trying to keep the riffraff from riffing and raffing. That tangent aside, since Reddit's going through a blackout, that means I don't have usual access to RPG horror stories. And I would much rather have that protest happen than, a greedy corporate overlord who does not have class, unlike yours truly, to get their way. So instead I figured I'd dip into one of my own stories. From my ancient days of role-playing, before I discovered, healthy groups. Unfortunately, that was a discovery that took many, many years, and I have many, many stories. So I present to you the first part of The Chronicles of Dave, the shit role-player. This is kind of awkward timing, since the last video also had a guy named Dave be the problem player, but that's not my Dave. This Dave is different. Just accept that there's more than one person named Dave, okay? Anyway, Dave, the shit role player. So, obviously, I used to roleplay. Not Dungeons & Dragons tabletop RPG style roleplay, freeform RP. I enjoyed it, it helped me become a better writer, while making many, many missteps along the way. Why did I stop? Well, it boiled down to two guys, and I'm gonna talk a little about one of them today. I have more stories about him, but just an intro should do for now. We'll call him Dave. Okay, so some background. This wasn't a game system. Like I mentioned, it was freeform text roleplay, anything goes. Any canon character, any original character, as many characters as you wanted and could keep track of. This went into the hundreds. Anything was on the table. Just don't be an overpowered jackass. Dave forgot this. Often. This was a very small board, and names were changed to protect the innocent. Alex. That's me! I'm not innocent. My name doesn't get changed. Dave. The guy who made the RP board. Robin. Grew into a friend of mine by also growing tired of the shenanigans of Dave. You may also see the following names pop up every now and again in stories of Dave. Veronica. Mutual friend of me and Robin. Happily goes along with Robin's adventures. Steve. Like me, a hanger-on from previous roleplay forums. Neil. Friend of Robin's, much lower key than the rest of us. Names of any original characters who weren't mine are also changed, because, again, I'm not innocent. My original characters have changed over time, so I'm using the most recent name and design for them, unless old designs are relevant. Long story short, they're part of a story I hope to write one day. Canon characters do not have their names changed, because Luigi does not need your stupid protection. Now, Dave was many things, all of them negative. He had the energy to RP and drive things happening, sure, but the things he wanted to happen were banal. Like, a chili contest was the most important thing in the world to him, at a point in the story where a city was recovering from being bombed. And if you tried to have things happen, that wasn't going to fly. Eventually we learned to smack him into realizing that other people have characters and plots too, and he got it about 60% of the time. One of the earliest and dumbest examples of him not getting it was a storyline I was doing. So my main group of characters was a mercenary band known as the White Platoon. Their leader, Freischütz, was a modern cowboy with a high-tech shotgun and a desire to kick ass. He was also paranoid and a massive jerk to everyone around him. But the fact remained, people knew Freischütz and people respected and feared him, which made it very notable when he got kidnapped. The town was in disarray, everyone was panicking, thinking of what to do, and then Kaito Kumon from Kamen Rider Game, controlled by Robin, rolls up and is like, "Man, y'all are weak! How could you let your leader get kidnapped? That's disgraceful!" And another member of the platoon, Ganymede, Prince of the Oread, basically golems with a society with complex rules and status that I put together and Dave regularly ignored, stepped forward and is like, "You dare proclaim me dishonorable? I will not stand for this knave, come at me!" But before they could brawl in the streets, Dave had Torg Flexington from Borderlands move everyone to the battle dome that was in town for reasons. Honestly, one of the least weird parts of the setting. So Kaito and Ganymede were standing off, ready to brawl the hell out of each other to prove their honor. And if Ganymede could pull it off, he would earn Kaito's respect and help. Now, this was Ganymede's first major showing as a character, as this was after a recent heavy redesign, which was a way more generic stone golem and was boring as hell. So Robin and I did the only real mechanic in the setting to determine the battle, rolling dice and narrating based on who got the higher number. It was tense, it was deep into it, and then Dave got bored and decided he would rather have Luigi randomly walking through the streets finding 3 girls from Puella Magica telling jokes to each other. Yep. This was a major moment for my character, and an arc involving my characters, and Dave decides midway through that my moment is over, and I can just sit there twiddling my thumbs while he roleplays listening to jokes. Now, this was in the early days, when Robin tolerated a little more of Dave's shit. So she also dropped the fight while Dave was flooding chat with messages about Luigi to actually tell some of said jokes, since she was the only one who controlled the Puella Magica characters. And they were fine, pretty standard stuff. But then Dave decided he was bored of that and had Alf get attacked by a cat. Both were controlled by Dave. There was no story behind it, just Alf getting attacked. He had to get wrangled back to jokes and had Luigi tell some low-tier knock-knock jokes. This went on for an hour or so, until the time allotted for that day's roleplay session ended. And that's the story of how Luigi finding 3 girls telling jokes was more important than anything I was doing. So we've established that Dave gets bored and wants attention on his characters, or at least those he controls at any given time, yes? Good. Because that is hardly the only time. It happened a lot. One such moment, vital to the ultimate story in this vid, to explain exactly what a train wreck Dave was, involved his 2 main characters. Let's call them Tristan and Kunoichi-kun. Tristan was your typical heroic mold, fight evil with sword and shield, yada yada type. Occasionally turned evil for drama, more than once, it happens. Kunoichi-kun was a ninja, and Tristan's girlfriend, partner, what have you. I think way back when she was introduced, she was hired to kill him, but they fell in love, you know how it is. Now, I forget the exact how and why of this story. Let's say me, Robin, Veronica, and Steve were solving the mystery of some mysterious masked man. Dave could have helped, but instead Kunoichi-kun was like, "Hey, let's go back to our place." Not at the most appropriate time, but hey, whatever, sure. So Tristan and Kunoichi-kun head back to their house, and we think that's just a break while the rest of us did the actual plot. Nope. Tristan and Kunoichi-kun started banging. In great detail, and for a long while. Now, I just want to say, as long as everyone involved is a consenting adult, there's nothing wrong with ERP. I'm not a Puritan, people know what sex is, it's fine. But that's the thing. Consenting. Most groups of TTRPG players, or in our case just role players, usually have their standards set at cut to black. Again, people know what sex is, and we don't need the details. Like, one of my characters is a fucking lust demon, and almost every sentence out of her mouth is innuendo. I don't describe in detail how she porks people, because I respect that people don't want the details. When people like Dave decide to go into the details, it's very uncomfortable for everyone else that's gathered around, who did not consent to this. Now granted, he didn't try doing the do with any of our own characters, but at the same time, it's really frickin' weird to watch some guy talk about his 2 action figures boinking each other. It wasn't even for a plot or anything. They just did the naked tango for a solid hour because Dave was bored that attention wasn't even on him. So we've established that Dave is easily bored, and that he pushes boundaries, right? Good. Because that is definitely not the worst. So as part of pushing boundaries, he liked loud and offensive media. South Park, dick figures, rabbids, stuff like that. But rabbids aren't offensive. Yeah, I know, but these are pre-Mario and Rabbids. the ones whose character entirely consists of screaming and breaking something and being as obnoxious and destructive as possible. That kind of humor applied to shock media and the like, that was up Dave's alley. This is important. So after being subject to an hour of watching a man RP sex with himself, we had a talk with Dave about how weird that was. He interpreted that as he should have another character to embarrass Tristan and prevent him from having quality time again. Enter Granny. Granny was Tristan's grandmother. The type of character who yells about whippersnappers not showing respect, and generally having only the one type of character trait/joke. She showed up a lot, and tried that routine on a lot of people. Few of whom listened to her, and fewer of whom tolerated her. Eventually, everyone just kind of told her to get lost. Now, around this time, Dave was also really focused on role-playing as Eric Cartman. Eric, for those who don't know, is from South Park, and is generally the worst child in the world. Hates people, hates minorities, hates religions that aren't his own. Eric Cartman is a terrible human being. As a result, he regularly comes up on social media when people post clips from old South Park episodes and are like, OMG, this solves the X problem! As if they're supposed to agree with Cartman on what the problem is and what the solution is. His solution usually involves horrible hate crime. He's one of those characters you should not agree with, like Rick Sanchez, Homelander, and what have you. So of course, Dave was one of those that thought he was hilarious. And for the life of me, I can't remember what prompted Eric Cartman in character to have this idea, but Dave thought it would be hilarious for him to team up with Granny and open a strip club staffed by old women. Yes, he thought that what was most important, in the middle of other plots happening, was old lady strippers. Yes, he narrated it in great detail, for quite some time. He ignored people telling him in and out of character to stop. This was just too funny, everyone, talking about flopping old woman parts. We even tried ignoring it, but he yelled as loudly as text-based RP would allow to bring attention back to him. It got to the point where the White Platoon, who were busy trying to take down an evil spy network, looked up to discover the Old Lady Strip Club had moved across the street from their headquarters, and decided that enough was enough. They were going to pack up everything and leave, because if this was going to be the new normal for how Dave ran the town that was supposed to be a collaboration, there was nothing worth defending here. All the while I was saying that, of course, Dave was screaming about old lady strippers, and never explaining what the goal was of this nonsense. I didn't stop after that. I was a fool. But I think old lady strippers is the exact moment when I realized that Dave truly was a shit role player. Now, admittedly, because this one is my story, I'm a little bit biased, but what absolute insanity. What kind of thought goes through a man's brain to determine the best thing to do in a small roleplay community trying to advance the plot is to make a strip club for old women, and then do nothing but shout about how there's a strip club for old women? There's no joke beyond that, it's just the existence of the strip club for old women, and apparently that's the most hilarious thing in the world and bears endless repeating. For those of you saying I should have actually left and not just had characters leave, should have just gone away and never looked back, I know. I'm in the future also. But keep in mind, I was very stupid and very in need of social interaction, and that was my biggest source at that time. Now, of course, I don't have that problem because I'm a supervillain, and I can force anyone to be my friend whenever I want, or else I'll have to fire the friendship gun. No one has been stupid enough to dare me to fire the friendship gun. Speaking of being my friend, if you enjoyed this video, do the usual suspects. Like, comment, subscribe. It really helps, and I'd like to get to that fancy new monetization tier where I can make memberships. What? I can be open about my need to make money? I'm evil. But until then, this has been your maniacal overlord of the internet, the man on the internet, hoping that you enjoyed the story, hoping that you want to hear more, and hoping you have a wonderful day. Or else.